Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the latest from Vorna, Aamunkoi, out April 21st on Live Force Records. This album has 9 tracks, 44 minutes in length, and this is the band's 4th full-length studio album. They are a Finnish metal band. From a design point of view, this album at the first glance feels very simple. Starts off strong, has a little bit of a valley in the middle, and then it comes back up again. That is the first perception that you have when you listen to this album. The more you listen to this record, the more you realize that the design of the album has an incredible impact on the playability of the album itself. It's an album that does pack a bit of aggression at the top. It does pack a little bit of heaviness at the top. But the melancholy and melody is also there. It's just a little bit more textured in, a little bit more layered in. The middle portion of the album, it kind of changes the polarities as far as those two dynamic elements are concerned. So you start to become a little bit more cognitive of how the melody and melancholy of the sound of this record has an impact on the atmosphere and the overall feel and vibe that the songs give. So then the second half of the album, while perhaps feeling slightly similar to the first half, becomes different because your perception of it completely changed. You're more prepared and more adapted to better understand it, to better digest it, giving the record incredible playability because by the time you finish the album, you're ready to go back again to the beginning, and then that beginning sounds different than it did before because of what you've learned through the first time going around this record. It's an album that always evolves and has this sort of playability continuously. You can listen to this album 10 times. The sound is going to come across differently. The growth that the album has is going to come across differently. And how you interact with it is also going to be different because it also has an impact on your own emotional baggage that you bring into the record, your state of mind that you bring into the record. Things drop into the background unnoticed and things come back again into the forefront unnoticed. It's an album that has incredible life. It's almost like the songs are being created in front of you every time you're listening to them. As far as the soundscape is concerned, this is a very rich sounding album, and it's an album that cannot be placed under one single umbrella, under one single genre. Moments of this record you feel more of a black metal sound because of the aggression, the heaviness, and how driven and direct it is. Some portions of the album have more of a doom vibe because of the melancholy and melody that they infused into the tracks. Some portions of the record feel symphonic because of how epic the sound is. Some portions of the album are purely atmospheric. So it's a record that has just so many different faces, not just from song to song, but within the songs themselves. It constantly moves and constantly evolves. But it's only possible to create an album like this, with this kind of sound, with this kind of imprint, if the production behind it is top notch. And on this record, it really is. You're able to see the forest and the trees. You're not forced to look at one versus the other. You're able to see exactly all of the different elements, all the singularities of each and every single song, and then you're able to see the big picture that they paint in front of you. So the production behind this album really allows this record to work, not just from the concept behind it, but then the delivery of that same concept. And then you have an element like the keyboards that normally, when is the driving force behind any record, I'm normally not very comfortable with it because I feel like the sound becomes something that it didn't need it to be. It becomes over-synthesized and it takes a little bit away from the warmth and the texture of everything else. It hides everything else. It's not the case here. They used an element that more often than not is a layer, that more often than not is there to add texture, to add life, to add a little bit of a footprint in terms of how these songs are created. So it's not in the forefront. But just because it's not in the forefront, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have an incredible impact on every single song and on your perception of those same songs. It's very interesting how they were able to do that. Not many bands can pull this off. These guys really pulled it off on this album. Used a secondary element to almost become the primary element without letting you know that that's exactly what is happening. And then you have bass here that really pops. This is an album that is not afraid of using it, not afraid of letting it go through in the mix and creating a little bit more of an impact, helping ground the album at times. Sometimes when the drums are not as forceful, the bass really helps fill in those gaps. When the drums are forceful, the drums could be really heavy on this album. They could be really brutal. That more black metal side of the band comes through on the drum sound. but also the drums offer a little bit of a warm experience, a little bit of a soul to some of the more melodic and melancholic portions of this record. Not a one-size-fits-all drum-wise, actually very dynamic drum-wise from start to end within songs from song to song. And then you have the guitars. I was expecting this album to be more guitar-centric, to be more guitar-focused, to almost allow me to just think about the guitars sound-wise when I got to the end of it. And it wasn't the case. This is not to say that the guitars don't sound great. This is not to say that the guitars don't have an impactful role in the overall design of the sound. But because of how the keyboards came across, the subtle nature that they have, and the incredible impact that they create, almost forces the guitars to be there, but not necessarily hold the spotlight on them. So I enjoyed, obviously, the guitar sound, the melody, the melancholy that they offer, the heaviness that they brought in, the thickness that they give to some of these tracks. But it was so nice to see them just being another piece of the puzzle and not necessarily being the puzzle itself. This record, sound-wise, is really intriguing from that point of view because it pushes into the forefront something that you weren't expecting it, but it does it in such a calm and controlled manner that makes everything else still have enough room to breathe. And then you get down to the vocals. I honestly was expecting the clean, harsh vocal dynamic to be a little bit more predetermined. And what I mean by that is to almost follow a formula where you can expect exactly where the cleans are coming in or where the harsh vocals are coming in. And that wasn't the case. The album felt very organic from that perspective. The vocal performance almost felt like a one-take approach. At times it feels more like a storytelling way of recording and way of delivering them, specifically with the clean vocals, allowing you to get a little bit more emotional, to put at your emotional heartstrings, if you will. The clean vocals do that on a consistent basis from start to end. But how they use the harsh vocals is the part that really jumps out at me, because they were able to feel almost like an add-on and not necessarily the main course. This is definitely an album that relies a lot more on clean vocals to get the message across than the harsh vocals, but using the harsh vocals almost as a little bit of a spice that gives also emphasis to the mood, to the vibe, to the atmosphere that the clean vocals are creating. Incredible dynamic, feeling very natural as it flows from one into the other, and always finding the right spots at the right time in order to give the songs exactly the texture that they need. All around, this is definitely the band's best record to date, and it's going to be one of the best albums of 2023. It's just one of those records that you don't get tired of listening to because it sounds like a completely different record every time you press play. Whenever you discover an album that has this sort of feel, that gives you this sort of emotion, an album that I don't understand a single word that it said because it's all in Finnish, but somehow the energy of the music makes me feel something. I'm not sure if it's the message that the song has, but it makes me feel something. And music is all about making you feel something. So this album is all about the feels, from beginning to end, from song to song, from riff to riff, from bridge to verses, from verses to chorus. Incredibly designed, incredibly executed album across all of its parameters. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Aika, Pakenee, heavy symphonic atmospheric experience. That is pretty much what this song is all about from start to end. Now, it doesn't stay linear from start to end, but it always gives you that same vibe regardless of where you are within the ebbs and flows that the track offers. And there's a lot of ebbs and flows within this track. The drums add a lot of heaviness. You really feel the brutality of the drums on this song. When they're on, they're letting you know that they're there to be noticed. When they drop out a little bit more, then they fill in the gap. They become almost more of an atmospheric element almost behind the sound itself. It's a song that also relies a lot on melody and melancholy in order for you to then feel the more epic experience that the heavier side offers. Very dynamic storytelling approach vocally in terms of how the clean vocals are used, and then how they accentuate those clean vocals with pockets of harsh vocals really brings everything to life. It brings the story to life. Next we have Harva. The vocals soar on this track. The vocals almost command your attention from the beginning. Now, the backing vocals that they use throughout the entire track work extremely well in order to give volume, in order to give texture, in order to give depth So the vocals don't feel as loose, the vocals don't feel as penetrating, they don't feel as atmospheric, because those vocals behind it create almost a sense of echo. Like there's more there's more layers to peel vocally on this track. And they didn't do that consistently either. That addition of backing vocals comes in, it drops out, it comes in, it drops out, in order to give not just ebbs and flows to the musical side of the track that definitely has them, but to also give ebbs and flows to the overall vocal performance, so everything kind of comes in waves. There are some stripped down moments within this track, and then there are some cinematic experiences within this track. It's a song that has everything. It has a little bit of everything, and you see that movement vocally matching the same sort of movement musically. The two are intertwined. One helps define the other. Last but not least, Meri. This is a song that moves in a very unlinear way, as every song on this album does. But this one does it in a very different, with a different perspective. Think about the ocean. The ocean has different experiences. One minute it could be calm, the next minute there could be a storm. So there's a lot of movement at the surface, but it's also a track that offers a lot of movement underneath it. Think about the ocean once again, think about the currents. It might look steady on top, that doesn't mean that there isn't movement at the bottom. This song is a little bit like that. It kind of hides itself at times, and then when it exposes itself, you're able to better feel the elements and how it catapults you from one piece of it to the next. It has a lot of layers. It's super textured, super layered song all around. It's constantly adapting. It has a very eclectic nature to it. It's very hard to predict what's coming next because you're not really sure, but that's what's keeping you on your toes, and that's what's keeping you connected with it. There's moments where the mood comes down, and when it comes down, it comes really down. But then there's a jolt, and that jolt brings you back up again. So it's a song that it's made to almost make you feel uncomfortable, but it makes you feel uncomfortable in a very comfortable way because it has a perfect design, perfect execution, really well defined, and incredibly dynamic vocal performance from start to end, always coming in with the right tone, with the right delivery at the right time. This is it, Vorna with Aamunkoi, out April 21st on Life Force Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.